So in this case, this particular example, Les Stroud, we've interacted on several different occasions.
I've interacted with him a couple of times about coming on this podcast. Like, I was, because I'm not really into the bushcraft stuff, but like I know a lot of people are, and I think if that's something that people are into, it's like worth talking about on the podcast.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But our schedules have been misaligning, mostly because I get to do a lot of cool stuff. Like I get to talk to the leading Bigfoot researcher. In North America, and Les Stroud gets to go play guitar with Slash. So
there you go. Yeah,
we've been missing links, as it were. No pun intended. So
sure. Well, he spoke in the wake of Survivor Man Bigfoot, the series. He
did a Bigfoot series.
Oh yeah, you weren't aware of that?
No, I didn't know this.
Yeah, he got fascinated with this topic. Well, because he had a couple of possible encounters. One was a vocal on one of his solo expeditions.
What does a Bigfoot vocal sound like?
Well, there's quite a variety. Yeah. I mean, as you might expect, a solitary animal that both spaces itself with its conspecifics and deters interlopers, other competing males, as well as attract or at least advertise his presence to females.
I just imagine like
a loud call that carries over vast distances.
Does it sound like?
Well, the ones attributed to Sasquatch sound like high-pitched wailing banshee screams.
Really?
Loud, raucous, I describe it, vocalizations. If you've ever heard the loud call of an orangutan, you can get an idea of what it might be, because that's how they. And
is it like an elk bugle at all? Like, is it?
No, it's more of a wailing roar.
Yeah.
And peters off to a roar, a guttural rumbling. You'll have to. I'm sure we can find something online.
All right, yeah. This is Andrew either finding a good online Bigfoot one or imitating it himself.
I'll do my best.
Yeah, or find an orangutan call to compare.
That is purportedly what a Sasquatch sounds like.
Well, sure. And other sounds, whistling sounds, have been attributed to them. There's a real interesting set of recordings that there's no way to authenticate them entirely, but where this group of Sasquatch are kind of interacting in the presence of witnesses. They've come to a camp. The men are inside a wiki-up shelter. And they're hearing these things. They're sticking a microphone out to record, but very apish, very chimpanzee. In fact, they describe it kind of as chimp chatter.
Oh yeah, okay, sure. Well, I guess I know what a chimpanzee sort of sounds like.
So yeah, Les has this. He had these experiences which got him thinking about it, and given all the interest, all the requests about his experience that he fielded in interviews and whatnot, he decided to launch a Survivor Man Bigfoot. And he did a great job. I don't have cable TV, so I don't watch these things on a regular basis.
Yeah. No,
but the episodes that I saw were pretty good. I mean, what can you do? You're shoehorning this topic into the formula of going into the wilderness alone, and surviving. But he did a good job of visiting areas, providing some background to the history and so forth, and the lore in those areas, and then went out to survive. And along the way, pointed out how Sasquatch might survive, what resources are available, et cetera, et cetera. Well, on this occasion, he shows up at my lab with some footprint evidence, to have the footprint expert evaluate. And he had quite a selection. He had a couple of full-length footprints.
Is this in the series?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
We'll have to put like a link to it.
Yeah. And then a couple of smaller footprints. And he wanted to know my opinion of it. Well, they were interesting and very impressive. And, so I'm pointing out some of the things that are interesting about it. But there was just, there was something. I have a good eye for detail and a good memory for these footprints, having pored over them year after year after year. And I said, there's just something about this one. Well, I happened to have one of my molds that was out that I'd poured plaster in, because for the B-roll, a lot of times they like pulling that cast out of the mold. Sure. Great B-roll. So it was this one particular cast that came from, that's exceptionally clear because of the conditions under which it was imprinted. It's
a nice substrate.
Layer of mud, on a hard pan at a logging site, and in Washington, up at the Olympic Peninsula. So I said, there's just something about this. And I paused and I reached over on the bench and I pulled this cast over. And I says, it's like let me just make some comparisons right here. And, the shape of the toes. And they're kind of distinctive on this one because they're so clear, pressed into that mud, and the mud extruding up around and between the toe pads. And this individual has the little fourth and the fifth toes particularly are kind of teardrop shaped, just the way they look. And I said,
you start pointing.
Yeah, I start pointing out these similarities. I go, and I talked a little bit about how sometimes hoaxers use pattern after existing evidence, especially if it's been widely dispersed. And I've sold a lot of copies of that cast. I said, I'd have to think about this one for a bit. And he just looks at me out of the corner of his eye with that Cheshire cat little grin comes across his face. You're good. He had taken a copy of this cast, had provided it to a professional special effects artist in Hollywood to base an artificial foot that he could strap on his feet, because he wanted to go out in the woods and just to see, to experiment, as any good researcher would do at some point, and I've done it myself, and see what it would take to actually create a convincing footprint in the wild.
Yeah.
And then he made a plaster cast of it, and he brought that to show me, and the other one was a repeat of the experiment outside of his home in snow. And he'd made a snow print cast out of it, and so he just wanted to see, test me, I guess.
Well, even Survivorman's antics can't survive examination by Dr. Jeff Meldrum.
I like to think that. Yeah, I like to think that.
I think that.
But then the twist on the whole thing was he had these two more casts, which he then explained to me the background, which you can see on the episode, where he was camped out on this, I think he was actually out on the frozen lake. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why you would want to sleep on ice, but he said he heard something and during the night. And then the next morning he found these footprints that had walked just 10, 15 yards behind him across the snowfield. And he'd made a cast of a pair of these. Well, I looked at them and they were human. There was no question whatsoever. He goes, no, they can't be. He said, I was the only one out there. And he said, someone walking around barefoot in this. I said, well, I don't know what to tell you, but I wasn't there to see them in the snow, in the ice, whatever. But I mean, it's got the proportions. It's got the arch. I said, look at the little toe. Little toe's turned on its side. This Sasquatch wore shoes then, most of his life. It's turned completely on its side. I said, this is human. It has all the hallmarks of human. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck.
It's a duck.
He goes, no, it can't be. And he just would not have it. It was the strangest thing. So what a quirk. The thing he was trying to fake me out with was clearly modeled after an existing set. But then the other thing that he thought was genuine, there's no way. I mean, there's just, if I told him, if those are genuine, then I have to go back and start all over again. Go back to the drawing board, because that's human. That's a human footprint.
Well,
I mean, they were only 8 inches long.
Right.
If it had been 16 inches long and had those features, then it's more compelling or more interesting, thought-provoking, but still hard to deny.
What's Shaquille O'Neal doing out here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, maybe that was his producers messing with him. I'm sure happy our producers don't. Hey everybody, thank you for watching this bonus clip. For more of this kind of thing, make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps us out. If you want to see the episode where we got this clip from, you can see it right up there. And if you want to see more podcasts, playlist right there. Check them out. Super good. I like that. This really was a good episode.